climate protesters or Islamic extremists, and then we figured, who cares these days? It's kind of hard to tell the difference. Both are motivated by a religious zeal. Both believe they're living at the end of days. Both groups seem to hate Western civilization, and neither group seems to be concerned about using violence to achieve their ends. So let's start with the climate protesters. In London overnight, they used hammers to smash the glass protective case on a 376-year-old masterpiece at the London Gallery. Now, before we show you what happened, just to give you some context, this is not the first time that the Rokeby Venus oil painting has been vandalised. In 1914, Mary Richardson vandalised this painting in the name of women's rights. Well, the climate protesters have continued that fine tradition, but in the name of stopping oil.
It is time for deeds and not words. It is time to just stop oil.
Well, there's a little tradition they failed to mention, and that is that when the artwork was vandalised in 1914, Mary Richardson, who the protester referred to there, got 6 months jail. Maybe we should continue that tradition as well.
Oh, I watched this and laughed. Please do not parallel yourselves with the suffragettes. They did a lot of jail time. They were actually tortured. Then there was the force feeding. You guys wouldn't last 5 minutes in their shoes. And something else these guys should know. The suffragettes in the early 1900s were considered terrorists. I kid you not, they were considered terrorists. There were the suffragists who fought for the same cause but peaceably using lobbying and other means. Then there were the suffragettes, and they were best known because they got a lot of similar media coverage back in the day because of the means that they would employ. But they were considered absolute nut jobs, and historians argue to this day that they did worse for the cause than any others fighting for women's rights because of the way they were regarded. They used violent means all the time, featured regularly in the media of the day, but they were considered pests. That's why they were locked up, because the means that they used to push their cause were not peaceable, were incredibly disruptive, hence they were jailed and treated the way they were. Now, I'm not saying that's okay, but the point is that it's not someone that you want to emulate. They actually turned public opinion against the cause, particularly the Prime Minister of the day, which back in the day was very important. If you didn't have the personal goodwill of the Prime Minister, your cause was all but lost. So it made me laugh because once again we see that the collective brains trust of this movement, here they are drawing upon the suffragettes as, you know, example. Here they are over 100 years later following in their footsteps. Firstly, you're half-baked compared to them. Trust me, they were hardcore. And secondly, not an example you want to follow. They actually did more damage to the cause, just like you flogs are currently doing, than they are in actually endearing it to public sentiment and bringing people on board with them, with the narrative they're trying to sell.
Well, they should just be locked up for being Philistines, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what reason you target such an august painting. You ought to be locked up for doing so. I mean, what? Next thing they'll be going into the opera and going down into the orchestra pit and start attacking people's instruments. Oh, we can't have anything nice here in the West. I don't think it's a coincidence that when they do these things, because this isn't the first attack they've had on an art gallery, right? They target things that you might call icons of or examples of the greatness of the West. I don't think it's coincidental at all that they choose to go to places like art galleries or to Wimbledon, like you're seeing on your screen there, or Lord's, like we had earlier, or the wedding of a Conservative politician, because these are all...
Van Gogh!
I know, I mean, these are all indicators of the success of the West, and we know ultimately that's what these people have a problem with. Like, they want us to regress back into the dark ages. Just stop oil is code for let's turn off all the lights, and we'll take away your iPhones as well, by the way. Don't tell them about that bit. They mightn't like it very much. But I reckon this is why it actually happened, or at least why the bloke wanted it to happen. Take a squiz at this. Towards the end of the vision that you see there, he puts out his hand so that she can grab it, and then she scooches a little closer over to him.
Mission
It's
accomplished.
like, not
That's
now,
why he's
Jeremy,
there.
for crying out loud.
That's the only
Trying
way
to
you
be
can get a girl to
badass.
hold his
That's
hand.
the closest he's ever been to having a girlfriend in his life.
So if you look behind them at the painting that they've just massacred behind them there, look at the damage that she's managed to do, 3 tiny little dents, compared to him. Like, he's not even buff. And he's, without a guy on the scene, the girls would have barely made a scratch.
And she had to do all the shouting as well, I noticed at the start. He wasn't doing any
was
of that.
leading the
She
charge.
was running the
What
show.
amazes me about that is that they filmed themselves doing the protest, both the smashing with the hammer and then their speeches, and it went for well over a minute. How can someone do that for well over a
Without
minute
being
in an art
interrupted?
gallery and nobody thinks to intervene? And the other thing, that guy there who got the payoff at the end when he got to hold the girl's hand, he gave a little speech, right? And maybe this is why she held his hand, because he's clearly a genius. He said, "If we love art, we must stop oil." Buddy, you just smashed the art with a hammer.
What?
So
Oh, the connection is so clear.
God, well,
Titan of intellect, right?
Incredible.
If we love girls, we must go along with them to protest, in the hope that one day they might do something nice for us.